I just got off a call with a member of FitBucks, and this situation highlights why so many people cost themselves hundreds of thousands of dollars, and in a lot of cases, millions of dollars throughout their lifetime. It's just one simple tweak. And one of the big things I always hear is, well, I don't need to plan right now. I don't need to plan yet. And this story highlights why not only should you plan now, you should continuously plan and keep planning. Even if like this example, the person wants to buy a house, but it might not be for like 3 years. And it's like, well, why do I need to plan now? Why do I need to do this? It's like, no, you should be planning constantly. Okay. So I'll share with you this story and how, one, traditional finance could cost you a lot of money, but two, how doing the right thing can save you a ton and actually make you a lot of money. Okay. So this individual lives in Northern California. She happens to be a PT. Her spouse is a PT also. Now, the main difference is that she works in a hospital. He works remotely, does telehealth. So he can work anywhere that he wants to. Okay. So they want to buy a house. So they scheduled a call with FitBucks. I got on the call as their coach, started talking to him. I'm like, what's your goals? And they said, well, we were thinking about buying this house. And I said, well, why are you hesitating? And they said, well, it's what happens if the market goes down. So I asked them, I said, well, what's your long-term goal? Does it really matter if the market goes down? Because if you're going to stay in the house for 30 years, who cares? And they're like, well, no, we want to move back to SoCal in 3 years. They're from SoCal. They like SoCal. They'd rather go back to SoCal. Okay. So traditional finance people, your financial experts, would say right then and there, don't buy a place. Why? Because, well, if the market goes down, you're kind of at a risk, and now you got to stay up there. Or if you want to move back to SoCal, now you got to rent it because you're upside down your house, all this type of stuff. Now you got a mortgage plus a rent. So they just say, don't do it. Just start saving for a down payment. And that's what they would have left it at. And that's what they were contemplating doing. And I said, well, wait a second. You're going to buy a place in 3 years in SoCal. Now, the problem is that housing in SoCal, where they're going to, is not as expensive, but it's expensive where they're going to. The big difference is their income was going to take a pretty big hit going from NorCal to SoCal, because even though the housing affordability is about the same. Okay, that's the key thing. And I said, and actually some people would say it's actually worse in SoCal, housing affordability relative to the Bay Area. Even though the Bay Area might have higher prices, the salaries are higher. Okay. And so I said to them, I said, well, when you move, you guys are going to have to take a pay cut. That's going to be really hard for you to afford a house in that area. And they're like, we know, that's what's stressing us out about it. But they're in a unique situation. This is why you got to talk to an expert. As I said, well, wait a second. What happens if you buy the house now in SoCal? And because your husband works as a telehealth for telemedicine, he can work anywhere he wants to, which is an advantage because he can claim that as his primary, and he can work anywhere he wants. So he can still be up in NorCal, and you guys can keep your NorCal wages for the first 3 years. And while your guys aren't down there necessarily every day, you can rent out some of the rooms, or you can live in there for a year, and then they can rent it out for the next 2 years after that. So they can actually be collecting money off of it. And that's a benefit because instead of having to use an investor loan, they can use a regular purchase loan, a primary house loan, which is a lower interest rate. They're like, wait, what? We could do that? It's like, yeah. And not only that, but because they're still got their NorCal wages, they can actually pay more and prepay the loans faster. So let's just say they took out a $700,000 loan. And in the first year, they paid off $100,000 because of all the extra money they make in NorCal. So that loan goes from $700,000 to $600,000. Most loans allow you to do what's called a recast, where after you pay off, most of them are about a year. So within a year, let's just say you make a big payment like that and your balance drops, you can recast it so that way the required payment also drops. So therefore, when they move back to SoCal, they can then turn around and actually be able to afford the monthly payment. So now they get the house and they can actually afford it because they planned. And that's why this stuff is so important to start looking at now for most people, is because if they would have just said, taken that traditional financial advisor advice of, oh, well, you're going to be moving in 3 years, so just save for down payment and buy the place in 3 years from now when you go down to SoCal. If they would have just taken that advice, they wouldn't have been able to afford the mortgage when they go down there. Now they can take advantage of their NorCal wages over the next 3 years and really dump a lot of money into that thing and get it paid down and have their house ready to go when they're there. Plus, they have an asset that somebody else is paying rent and paying them for. So great, go do it. So that just goes to show you, it's like start planning now. Start planning early and often. And again, if you guys have questions, you guys like the content, make sure you subscribe on the YouTube channel. If you're on Facebook watching this, make sure that you sign up. Schedule a call with your FitBuzz coach. We'll be talking to you soon.